Chris Mackowski for Emerging Civil War. It is the 15th of May, 2019, 155 years ago. The first United States colored troops came into combat with the Army of Northern Virginia here on what used to be the Aldrich Farm at the intersection of the Catharpin and Old Plank Roads. Now, this state historical marker, which was put up for the centennial, acknowledges that action. It's the first bit of interpretation that really talked about that important action, although the fight itself actually took place just a little farther up the road. The sign went here because this was a nice convenient spot where the traffic wasn't clogged. The road gets a little narrower further up toward the actual intersection itself. What had happened was, coming from the area of Todd's Tavern in that direction, a little bit off to the west, Thomas Rosser's Confederate cavalry was out doing a reconnaissance, trying to get some information for Robert E. Lee. As they moved up the Catharpin Road with their eye on Orange Plank Road, which is up in that direction, or Old Plank Road, excuse me, they ran into the 2nd Ohio Cavalry. The Buckeyes scattered, a little outmatched by Rosser's very experienced Confederate cavalry, and they began retreating up this road in the direction of the 9th Corps Division that was commanded by Edward Ferraro, a former dance instructor. Ferraro is the one who's in charge of the United States colored troops. They've been relegated to the back to protect the wagon trains and field hospital. But as the Confederates began to deploy in that field, they suddenly ran into these Federal troops. The Buckeyes were delighted to find some infantry reinforcements to help them out. They said that it was quite a sight to see glistening bayonets coming forward, even though the men who carried them were blacks. They were unsure about how the USCT would react. In fact, everyone was. That's one reason why the USCT had been relegated to the rear, because people were unsure how they would perform in combat. It was also a political issue for Lincoln, because he was afraid people would consider him using them as cannon fodder, and he certainly didn't want that either. So there was a lot of question about how to use the USCT. In fact, many of them felt like they weren't going to get used at all. Suddenly, having Rosser's cavalry show up gives them the opportunity to show their stuff. They deploy in the fields behind me, start moving forward. They're green troops, so they do make a blunder. They actually send their color guard forward with the skirmishers. That would have put their flags too close to the enemy. It created some embarrassing problems had those colors been captured. But they were able to rectify their position, sweep forward. Rosser's cavalry is going to deploy in some wood line right behind me. But one volley from the infantry is enough to convince them that they are outmatched. Even as experienced as Rosser's men were, they're no match for infantry, even green infantry, so they're going to hop on their horses and head back toward Lee's army. On the way, they're going to bump into David Bell Birney's 2nd Corps Infantry Division. Birney's men have had a tough day because they tangled with Joseph Kershaw's division from the 1st Corps. And then Rosser's going to finally be able to make it back to the Army headquarters and provide a little intelligence to Robert E. Lee. He's so embarrassed by this incident here at the Aldrich Farm that he doesn't mention it in his report. He does mention a small force of infantry that he bumps into, probably referring to Birney's men, but he does not mention the fact that he was swept from the field by the United States colored troops. Elsewhere, action on the Spotsylvania battlefield is really going to kind of be focused more toward the Fredericksburg Road, but it's raining on the 15th. Neither army can do a whole lot. That's why Lee is looking for information, using Kershaw's division for a reconnaissance and force, using Rosser's cavalry to sweep around to see what he can find out. What he ends up running into is a little bit of history here against the United States colored troops on the Aldrich Farm. I'm Chris Mackowski for Emerging Civil War.